Welcome back to the deep dive. When we talk about innovation, there's this natural tendency to focus on the relentless march of technological progress.
Mm.
Faster chips, higher resolution, more and more power. We usually assume that to win, you have to build the fastest, the shiniest, the most expensive machine out there.
And that assumption is so often the innovation trap. And, the perfect counterintuitive success story, and this is really our starting point for this deep dive, is the history of Nintendo's Wii.
Oh, I remember this era so clearly.
Yeah.
I mean, by 2006, the console war was just this arms race. Sony and Microsoft were battling it out to see who could deliver the most technologically advanced console.
Right. It was all about processing power, photorealistic graphics.
It's all about specs and horsepower.
Yeah.
Who had the biggest numbers?
Exactly. And Nintendo was facing a crisis. Their U.S. sales had basically been cut in half. The market was changing, and they were staring down two massive problems.
Okay, what were they?
So first, their core gaming population was aging. These people had careers, they had families, and they just had less time for those 80-hour super complex games.
And the second problem?
The cost of entry was just skyrocketing. The consoles were getting so expensive that they were limiting their audience. It was becoming a very niche, very expensive hobby.
So the pressure must have been absolutely immense to just follow the trend, right? To build their own monster machine. But Nintendo, they did the opposite.
They did. They executed this radical, almost impossible departure from the norm. The CEO, Satoru Iwata, and the legendary designer Shigeru Miyamoto, they made a deliberate decision to use a cheaper, lower power chip.
So they were choosing to have fewer graphics capabilities than the competition.
Voluntarily, they chose a technologically inferior position on purpose.
On paper, that just sounds like corporate suicide. I mean, but the genius wasn't in the chip, was it? It was in redefining who games were for and how you played them.
That's it, exactly. The focus shifted entirely from processing power to interaction. They introduced the motion-sensitive wireless controller, the Wii Remote.
I remember that thing. It was so simple, this sleek white design.
And it completely transformed the style of play. Suddenly, gaming wasn't about memorizing, these complex button combinations. It was about physical gestures. It was about movement and intuitive actions.
And the result was it was stunning. The Wii wasn't just a hit with the hardcore players looking for something new.
No, it became a massive success with non-gamers. It brought in families, seniors, groups of people who were drawn in by this collaborative, interactive nature. It didn't just compete in the market that existed.
It created a brand new one.
It did. It fundamentally proved that radical innovation sometimes means simplifying the technology, lowering that cost threshold, while at the same time creating a vastly more engaging and accessible user experience.
So they didn't just buck the trend.
They successfully defined a new and incredibly profitable norm.
Okay, let's unpack this victory. That is our mission today. We are taking a deep dive into the entire new product development process, a kind of shortcut to understanding how you turn that initial flash of inspiration, like the Wii, into sustainable market success.
We're going to give you a roadmap. We'll look at the immense challenges, the organizational structures, and the really rigorous stages that are required to successfully manage all the uncertainty that's inherent in innovation and ultimately drive long-term growth.
We've distilled some really detailed analyses of corporate strategy and execution, and we're looking past the glossy marketing reports to find those critical success factors. The things that separate the true transformative blockbusters from the 90% of new ideas that, despite all the effort, just fall short.
It's a huge number.
It is. So let's start with why we're even having this conversation. In modern business, innovation, it's not optional. It is the core requirement for survival.
It truly is an imperative. I mean, companies that stagnate, they just become vulnerable. And while, sure, improved products and incremental updates are great for maintaining sales right now.
Right, keeping the lights on.
It's the new-to-the-world products that actually transform industries and companies. They open up entire new revenue streams, and they redefine what competitive advantage even means.
And if you fail to innovate, you leave your existing offerings just wide open to obsolescence. And this is a story that just plays out over and over and over again.
Oh, yeah. The classic and probably most painful example is Kodak. They were the undisputed leader in traditional film. They owned the market. They owned the technology.
They were the definition of a blue-chip company.
Totally. Yet they failed to adapt fast enough to the digital transition. I mean, they had to fight incredibly hard, investing billions to develop entirely new business models, new processes aimed at organizing and managing personal image libraries, something that other companies had already mastered.
So they were playing catch-up in a world they could have owned.
Exactly. They were ultimately undone, not by a bad product, but by clinging too tightly to a vanishing market.
So if companies decide, okay, we need new products, they face this fundamental strategic choice. Do we build them or do we buy them? The classic make or buy decision.
And this is the acquisition versus organic growth decision. Now, acquisition is the fast lane. You can acquire products by buying companies, patents, or licenses.
Right.
Look at the Swiss food giant Nestle. To expand rapidly in North America, they didn't spend decades developing new products from scratch. They just purchased market presence.
By buying up everyone.
Everyone. They acquired huge established brands like Carnation, Gerber, Stouffer's, Dreyer's, ice cream. It's a way to instantly gain market share, manufacturing capacity, and distribution networks.
But I have to imagine that relying exclusively on buying other people's success can create some, I don't know, cultural problems.
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly, it means you're not developing your own internal muscle for innovation.
Precisely.
Mhm.
And that's why firms absolutely must have organic growth developing new products internally, leveraging their own R&D labs and their own institutional knowledge. If they have ambitious sales goals, they cannot rely solely on external shopping sprees.
Do we have an example of that?
Yeah, a great one is Praxair, a huge provider of industrial gases. They set a goal of achieving $200 million per year in new annual sales growth.
That's a huge number.
It is. And they hit that target not through one massive acquisition, but through organic growth. It was driven by managing numerous small but significant internal projects, each valued at around $5 million.
So when we talk about new products, we have to recognize that the term itself covers a huge spectrum, right? Not all newness is created equal.
That is such a critical distinction, and it's one that's often overlooked. Most corporate activity, I mean, the vast majority, is devoted to incremental improvement or just minor revisions of existing lines.
So like new and improved Tide.
Exactly. At a company like Sony, over 80% of their new product activity is simply modifying established products. So think about brand extensions like a new flavor of soup or, like you said, a new version of detergent Tide Total Care or Always Infinity. These are necessary incremental steps just to stay competitive.
But then you have the other end of the spectrum, the radical innovation, the total disruption.
And that's where it gets exciting. Fewer than 10% of new products are truly new to the world. These are the radical innovations, the game changers. The iPod, the Wii, the first reliable fax machine.
And these incur the greatest cost and risk.
By far. Because you have no market to compare them to, but when they succeed, they provide the most sustainable competitive advantage and, of course, the largest financial rewards.
And that kind of radical innovation is tough because you have to be willing to cannibalize your own successful products. It takes real corporate fortitude to launch a product that you know is going to eat into the profits of your current cash cow.
It requires a corporate culture that is deeply future market oriented and, crucially, one that tolerates massive risk. And here's a core difficulty. Estimating demand for these things is nearly impossible.
Why is that?
Because the customer doesn't know they want it yet. Marketers often have to adopt what they call a probe and learn approach.
So what does that probe and learn look like in practice? Is it just focus groups?
It's more than that. It's observation. You put rough prototypes into the hands of early users and you just watch what they do with them. You rely on ethnographic observation, online chats, dedicated blogs, because the customer can't articulate what they want until they can actually interact with the product. You're probing the market and then learning from that interaction and adjusting on the fly.
This brings us to the hard, cold truth that often shocks people outside of product development, which is just the high cost and the incredibly high rate of failure.
The statistics are horrifyingly consistent. I mean, new products fail at estimated rates as high as 50%, and some studies put it as high as 95% in the US and 90% in Europe.
90%, just think about that. For every 10 products you see launched, 9 of them might be commercial disappointments.
It's a huge hurdle.
So if the failure rate is that high, why? Is it just bad luck? Or is there something more systematic going on?
It's often systematic, and the reasons are very consistent. You see major overestimates of market size because enthusiasm clouds judgment.
Right. Everyone falls in love with their own idea.
Exactly. You see poor design or technical performance that just fails to deliver on the promise. Incorrect positioning, or maybe insufficient distribution and marketing support. And even if you launch successfully, you immediately face fierce, determined competitor backlash that can crush you before you ever gain momentum.
And we also face these, I guess, systemic drawbacks in the marketplace that make innovation even harder today than it was, say, 50 years ago.
Oh, absolutely. The marketplace is so fragmented now. We don't have monolithic mass markets. We have all these niche markets, which means lower potential sales and profits per product. Development costs are soaring because you have to explore so many dead ends just to find one success.
Plus, companies are always looking over their shoulder at, the government and society.
Constantly. Social, economic, and governmental constraints. I mean, think about safety regulations, environmental impact. They're all paramount now. You can't just launch a widget anymore. You have to prove its entire life cycle is responsible.
And there's that relentless, brutal pressure for shorter development times.
Brutal is the right word. If your rivals like Matsushita can copy Sony's latest product in 6 months, you have to compress your entire R&D timeline just to get a head start in the market.
But here's the critical philosophical shift, I think. Innovative firms, they don't just tolerate failure. They accept it as a necessary prerequisite for success. You have to fail.
That is the Silicon Valley mantra. It is imperative to fail. You learn more from what doesn't work than from what does. I mean, so many successful ventures today are really just phoenixes rising from the ashes of earlier failed ideas.
The pharmaceutical world seems to embody this philosophy, probably because the risk is so immense and the stakes are just so high.
It's the perfect example. Take Eli Lilly. They know that 90% of their experimental drugs fail in the discovery process. So instead of simply junking those failures, they have a corporate mandate to encourage their scientists to go back to the drawing board and find entirely new applications for those failed compounds.
And the return on that kind of institutional learning has been spectacular.
It truly has. Evista, which is now a billion-dollar drug used for treating osteoporosis, it started its life as a completely failed contraceptive compound.
Wow.
Strattera, a major seller for ADHD, was originally abandoned as an unsuccessful antidepressant. So the failure in one area directly funded a massive success in another.
That's not just in pharma, though.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Even W.L. Gore, the company behind Gore-Tex, they found that their highly successful Elixir acoustic guitar strings came directly from a failed venture into bicycle cables. The lesson is simple. Failure is just data.
So let's shift now from the necessary mindset of failure to the necessary structure for success. How do companies organize themselves to manage these complex, high-risk projects?
One of the most insightful organizational approaches we see is centered around what's called customer-driven engineering. It's about forcing the design process to integrate customer preferences from the very first sketch.
And Johnson & Johnson, particularly in their massive medical device business, they created an internal structure that actually mimics the venture capital world to ensure this happens.
That's a fascinating model. They replicated the dynamic of a fast-moving VC firm, but within the corporation. They created these internal startups that had to seek financing from other J&J units.
So it creates internal pressure.
Exactly. This organizational pressure forced greater input from external sources, the doctors who would use the devices and the insurers who would pay for them, to ensure the devices were not just technically clever, but desirable, feasible, and cost-effective in the real world.
So instead of engineers designing a tool they think a doctor needs, you get a unit like Ethicon Endo designing new surgical clips based directly on discussions with physicians about the genuine need for less invasive procedures.
Precisely. Now, to manage the entire portfolio of new ideas, companies need formal management structures. Often, responsibility just falls to existing product managers, but they are typically too overwhelmed just managing the existing cash cows.
That's why you see these dedicated teams being created, right?
Yes, you see focused roles like new product managers, Kraft and J&J use these, or you have high-level management committees that convene specifically to review and approve proposals. For larger enterprises, establishing a centralized new product department, led by an executive with substantial authority, is pretty essential for overseeing the entire development process from A to Z.
And then we get to the more romantic, almost secret mission structure. The venture team, sometimes known as entrepreneurs.
This is a really powerful model. These are cross-functional teams, and they're relieved entirely of their regular duties. They're given a specific budget and a clear time frame, and they often operate in these informal, deliberately isolated settings known as skunk works.
That term, skunk works, it always sounds like something out of a spy movie.
It's highly deliberate. The term originated at Lockheed Martin. It means an off-site protected location. It could be a garage or a separate floor where the team can focus entirely on development, free from all that bureaucratic inertia, the endless meetings and reports, or interference from management who are focused on existing products.
So it fosters speed and creativity.
Absolutely. And often, the goal of these cross-functional teams is to compress the timeline using what's called concurrent development.
Okay, so instead of the old linear approach where marketing finishes its part, hands it off to R&D, who then hands it to manufacturing, like a slow relay race.
Right. Concurrent development is described as more like a rugby match. Everyone is running together, passing the product back and forth continuously, solving problems simultaneously.
And the impact on speed has to be amazing.
It is. Look at Allen Bradley Corporation, a company that makes industrial controls. By shifting from a linear model to a concurrent system, they cut the development time for a new device from 6 years down to just 2.
6 years to 2, wow.
And this ensures that engineers are constantly informed by marketing needs, which prevents them from creating that proverbial better mousetrap that nobody actually wants.
So the ultimate formal structure for controlling all this chaos is what's known as the stage gate system.
The stage gate system is crucial because it imposes discipline on what is an inherently messy and chaotic process. It divides the innovation process into these distinct, manageable stages like idea generation, concept development, business analysis, and each stage ends with a critical gate or checkpoint.
And at that gate, the team can't just walk in with a good feeling, right? They need to show their work. They need deliverables.
Absolutely. The project leader must present concrete, pre-specified deliverables. So if they are moving from concept testing to product development, they need proof, a strong market research study, a confirmed competitive analysis, and a technical feasibility appraisal.
And the senior managers are the gatekeepers.
Right. They review all the criteria at each gate to make one of 4 critical decisions: go, kill, hold, or recycle.
So the process acts as a rigorous funnel, just winnowing down ideas as you go.
Yes, but it's not just a straight line. Many sophisticated firms use what's called a spiral development process. This means if technical testing reveals a flaw late in the game, you're actually encouraged to cycle back to an earlier stage, say, concept refinement, rather than forcing a flawed product through. The structure supports learning and iteration.
And the results really speak for themselves when this kind of rigor is applied.
They do. Ansell Healthcare, the world's largest manufacturer of protective gloves, adopted the stage gate system, and they saw the revenue contribution from their new products jump from 4.5% to 13% of total sales in just over 2 years.
That's a huge jump.
It's the difference between hoping for innovation and actually structuring for it.
Okay, now we hit the cold shower. Budgeting realities. This is where the enthusiasm of the idea meets the hard reality of the capital required. And since R&D outcomes are so fundamentally uncertain, traditional investment criteria are often just useless.
This is why the financial model has to account for massive attrition. Let's look closely at the cost funnel example from a large consumer packaged goods company. It illustrates the brutal economics of finding a success.
The sheer volume of failure is what is so staggering. They start with 64 initial raw ideas.
And by the time they pass the initial screening, only 16 of those remain. Concept testing winnows it down to 8. After extensive product development, they are down to just 4.
And then the test market.
Only 2 make it through the test market, and finally only 1 is a national success.
1 winner out of 64 starters. We have to look at the money involved here.
This is the important part. The development cost for that single successful idea was $5.7 million. But that doesn't account for the 63 failures.
So you have to factor in the cost of all the dead ends.
Right. When you factor in the money spent on all the ideas that were killed at the screening, concept, or test market stage, the total cost of the company was nearly $14 million.
So that is the real price of innovation. You have to be prepared to spend $14 million just to find that one winner that hopefully pays for everything else. It really contextualizes the commitment required from an inventor like Sir James Dyson.
Oh, absolutely. Dyson claimed he built 5,127 prototypes of his bagless vacuum cleaner
5,000.
over 14 years. Before he got it right, that single product, which generates over $1 billion annually, required thousands of financial and technical dead ends. His quote encapsulates it perfectly. If you want to discover something that other people haven't, you need to do things the wrong way. Watching why that fails can take you on a completely different path.
So the commitment isn't just financial, it's an institutional willingness to absorb 5,127 instances of technical failure.
That's the mindset.
So if failure is a prerequisite, we have to make sure we have a continuous, high-quality flow of ideas entering that funnel in the first place.
Yeah.
How do companies ensure they are even seeing the best opportunities?
The first step is adopting what's called an outside-in view. You have to stop looking solely at what you currently sell and start looking at the greatest unmet needs in the market. This is the essence of the Demand First Innovation and Growth Framework, or DIG.
The DIG
Yeah,
framework. That sounds like a highly disciplined way of generating market insight.
it is. It focuses rigorously on unmet customer needs rather than just, tweaking existing products. It starts with mapping the demand landscape using these deep, almost anthropological methods, ethnographic studies, self-reports, to really understand customer wants, problems, and desires, often before the customer recognizes them themselves.
And then from there, you find the opportunity space.
Correct. You use structured, innovative thinking tools to achieve market perspectives from radically different angles. And finally, you craft the strategic blueprint, which is figuring out exactly how the new product fits seamlessly into your customers' lives.
So it's about seeing the bigger picture.
It's about recognizing shifts. A great example is when Intel made that famous strategic pivot to abandon the highly competitive memory business entirely to focus on microprocessors. That was a clear outside-in move, recognizing where the future demand truly was.
Another gigantic trend in idea generation is open innovation, or what P&G famously called its Connect Plus Develop model.
This strategy is so important. It acknowledges that not all the smartest people work inside your own walls. Firms have to tap external sources, global organizations, individuals, consultants, to find proven technologies they can then improve, scale, and market.
That seems like a massive cultural shift for a company like P&G, which, historically relied entirely on its own internal R&D fortress.
It was huge, and it required huge organizational discipline. P&G found that for Connect Plus Develop to succeed, it required 3 core mandates. First, they learned you can never assume an external idea is actually ready to go. It always requires significant, risky internal scale-up work.
Okay, that makes sense.
Second, they realized they needed a full-time senior executive, a VP, to run the initiative. It couldn't be a side project.
And the third mandate, which you said was the most critical for success.
You cannot launch this strategy without a clear, top-down mandate from the CEO. It cannot be cordoned off in the R&D department. It has to be a core, company-wide strategy, or it simply won't get the internal resources it needs to connect with those external partners.
And the payoff for all that effort was tangible.
It was. P&G saw R&D productivity increase by nearly 60%. Their innovation success rate more than doubled, and their costs fell. They learned how to leverage external brains.
A related and, I think, increasingly powerful way to tap those external brains is crowdsourcing.
Yes. This is basically inviting the internet community to help create content, software, or, in the case of Cisco, their next-generation business ideas. Cisco created something called the iPrize.
An external innovation competition.
Exactly, to tap into the global genius that they otherwise just wouldn't be able to reach.
And their rationale was pretty simple, right? There are brilliant people out there with fantastic ideas who just lack the capital and infrastructure to turn them into businesses.
And they were right. They received 1,200 entrants from 104 countries. The winning entry, a plan for a sensor-enabled smart electricity grid, was awarded a massive $250,000 signing bonus.
And that's not all.
No. They also got up to $10 million in funding to head up an emerging technology business unit within Cisco. It's the ultimate buy the concept and buy the talent strategy.
So beyond these massive contests, companies also have to draw ideas directly from their front lines, their customers and their employees.
Customer input is invaluable, but you often need to observe more than you listen. Ethnographic observation is key here. Medtronic, a large medical device company, has their market researchers regularly observe spine surgeons using their products and competitors' tools right there in the operating rooms.
So they aren't asking, what do you want?
No, they're observing. Where is the moment of frustration? Where is the inefficiency?
And sometimes that frustration is really obvious, like Pringles solving the problem of broken chips in a bag.
Exacto. P&G realized consumers were frustrated by broken chips and the difficulty of saving an open bag. The solution was the perfect, uniform size of the Pringle chip and that tennis ball type can packaging.
And some companies take this to a whole other level.
They do. Harley-Davidson uses its 1 million HOG members, that's the Harley Owners Group, as a kind of customer advisory board to solicit product ideas directly.
And we can't forget the lead users. Who are they?
Lead users are the customers who are already pushing the boundaries of your product. They recognize the need for improvements long before others do. The classic example is the mountain bike.
Right, it wasn't invented by a major bicycle manufacturer?
Not at all. It was invented by a bunch of youngsters modifying their bikes, adding motorcycle brakes, better suspensions, so they could ride them down mountains. Companies gain immense value by seeking out and studying these highly advanced users.
Employee input is equally vital, and that requires a really strong internal culture.
Toyota is the model here. They claim their employees submit 2 million ideas annually. That's 35 suggestions per employee.
Wow. And how many of those actually get implemented?
A staggering 85% implementation rate. They make the process easy and they reward participation, not just success. Nokia encourages internal excellence by inducting engineers who file for at least 10 patents into its exclusive Club 10.
So beyond just gathering input, teams also use specific techniques designed to stimulate creativity.
Yes, structured creativity. One is called attribute listing. You list the attributes of an existing object and then you systematically modify each one. If you are developing a new screwdriver, you list its attributes: handle, material, tip, shape, size, and then you challenge them. What if the wooden handle became textured plastic? What if the tip changed shape?
And lateral marketing is a fascinating approach to more radical idea generation.
Lateral marketing forces the combination of two entirely distinct product concepts to create a new offering, and often a completely new category. So think about taking a gas station, a place for fuel, and combining it with food, a place for groceries. You get gas station stores.
Or a cafeteria plus internet access gives you a cyber cafe.
Candy plus a toy gives you a Kinder Surprise. It aims to pull you outside the current product category framework entirely.
Okay, so once we have this glut of ideas, we have to screen them. And the purpose of screening is ruthless efficiency. You have to drop poor ideas early because, as we saw with that cost funnel, development costs escalate substantially with each successive stage.
And here we have to focus on the danger of the drop error. That's when a company mistakenly dismisses an idea that would have been a massive success.
The sitcom Friends is the perfect cultural example of how easily the system can get it wrong.
It's a great one. The pilot episode was tested, and the internal research rated it weak. The report said it was not very entertaining, clever, or original. It scored just 41 out of 100.
So management could have easily just dropped it, citing the research.
Easily, but they didn't, and it became this generational, perennial ratings powerhouse.
That story is a massive warning sign. It shows that the data can be misleading if the idea is too unique, too new, or just too disruptive to fit the standard mold.
And conversely, the pilot for the successful medical drama ER scored a healthy 91. It fit a known formula. Friends didn't. So how do you impose systematic evaluation without killing the next big thing?
Well, management uses a systematic process. The ideas are reviewed against a core set of criteria. Does it meet a genuine need? Does it offer superior value to the customer? And do we, as a company, have the necessary know-how and capital?
And they often use what's called a weighted index method. They assign importance weights to key success factors. Things like, is the product unique and superior, or does it have a high performance to cost ratio? And then they score each surviving idea against those factors to get an overall rating. This forces an objective, systematic discussion instead of just relying on gut feeling.
And the most important financial metric they calculate here is the overall probability of success.
This number is a real gut check. It requires management to multiply 3 independent probabilities together. The probability of technical completion, can we actually build this thing?
Right.
The probability of commercialization, given that we built it, can we market it successfully? And the probability of economic success, given commercialization, will it actually make money?
So even if each step seems pretty likely, the combined probability can be low.
It can be shockingly low. If the probability of building it is 50%, the probability of selling it is 65%, and the probability of profit is 74%, your overall probability of success is a dismal 24%.
Only a 1 in 4 chance.
Exactly. Even if each component probability looks decent, the compounded risk is huge. Management has to look at that low number and decide if the potential payoff warrants continuing the long, expensive journey.
Assuming an idea survives that gauntlet of screening, the next crucial step is refining that raw idea into a solid, testable plan. And here, we have to clearly distinguish between a product idea and a product concept.
This is key. A product idea is vague. It's just a possibility. If I say, I have an idea for a powder to add to milk to increase its nutritional value, that's an idea. But consumers don't buy ideas. They buy product concepts, which are elaborated versions of the idea expressed in consumer
So
terms.
that vagueness has to be refined based on the target user, the primary benefit, and the consumption occasion.
Yes. That nutritional milk powder idea can split into several distinct concepts. Concept A could be an instant drink for adults who want a quick, nutritious breakfast without any preparation.
And concept B.
Concept B could be a tasty snack for children to drink as a midday energy boost.
And each of those concepts represents a category concept that defines who the product actually competes against. So concept A, the instant breakfast, competes against bacon and eggs or cold cereal.
While concept B, the snack drink, competes against soft drinks and sports drinks. And this distinction is vital for positioning your product correctly.
And from there, we can use tools like brand positioning maps to figure out where our new product stands relative to the competition on key dimensions.
Visually, imagine mapping existing instant breakfast products based on two axes. Say, price on one axis from high to low, and calories on the other, also high to low.
This kind of map can instantly show you where there might be some white space in the market.
Exactly. If all the existing brands are clustered in the low-calorie, high-price quadrant, your biggest opportunity might be the medium-price, medium-calorie market, where a large segment of consumers might be underserviced. It reveals exactly which consumer segment you should be targeting.
When we move into concept testing, the goal is pretty simple, right? The more the tested concept resembles the final product, the more dependable the test is.
That's why we rely on things like rapid prototyping, using computer models to quickly produce rough physical models for consumer reaction. And even more advanced are virtual reality programs that allow customers to interact with a product that doesn't physically exist yet.
And it's not just for gadgets either. I read Kenworth trucks use supercomputer analysis to estimate the drag reduction from a proposed new mud flap design.
That's a great example. By using advanced simulation, they could calculate the exact gas savings, about $400 per year for a typical truck, without having to manufacture and physically test dozens of different designs. That's rapid, cost-effective concept validation.
Now, concept testing is designed to yield what's called a need gap score. What does that tell us?
It measures consumer reaction along two critical dimensions: the need level, how much does the consumer actually need this product, and how important is the problem it solves, and then the gap level, how well do existing products currently meet that need.
So a high need gap score is what you want.
It's highly desirable. It means you have a strong, unfulfilled consumer need that existing alternatives are not satisfying.
And to really quantify consumer preference, the gold standard in concept testing is something called conjoint analysis.
Conjoint analysis is a real powerhouse tool. It's a quantitative method that derives the utility values that consumers attach to varying levels of a product's attributes. It forces consumers to make trade-offs, which is what real buying is all about.
Marriott famously used conjoint analysis to design their courtyard hotel concept. They realized consumers were willing to trade off certain amenities, like a massive ballroom, for others, like fast, reliable Wi-Fi and comfortable workstations.
Let's think about the detailed example of the carpet cleaner test. We are testing 5 distinct elements. 3 package designs, A, B, and C. 3 different brand names, 3 price points, the presence of a good housekeeping seal, and a money-back guarantee.
And we asked consumers to rank various combinations of these factors. Then the statistics figure out what drove their decision.
Precisely. The analysis derives the consumer's utility function for each attribute. So in the example, we might find that package B is highly favored, the money-back guarantee is crucial, but the good housekeeping seal doesn't really add much value.
So the critical insight is determining the relative importance of each attribute.
By measuring the difference between the highest and lowest utility level for each factor, you see its true weight. In that carpet cleaner test, price and package design turned out to be the most important factors. And this analysis reveals a crucial distinction.
What's that?
The offer that is most customer appealing, so the combination of features that promises the highest market share estimate, is not always the most profitable offer to make due to production costs. You have to balance that consumer desire with manufacturing reality.
A successful concept then matures into the preliminary 3-part marketing strategy development plan. This is the transition from concept to corporate commitment.
Part 1 defines the core strategy. This includes clearly identifying the target market, the precise positioning of the product, and the initial goals. For our instant breakfast drink, this meant targeting families receptive to a convenient breakfast solution, positioning the product at the higher price, higher quality end, and setting specific initial goals, say 10% market share in year 1, while accepting a calculated loss not exceeding $1.3 million.
Then part 2 is the year 1 tactical plan.
This outlines the planned price, the initial distribution strategy, and the detailed marketing budget. What are the flavors? What's the price? $2.49 a box. What kind of dealer incentives will we offer? 1 case free for every 4? And how do we split that massive promotion budget? Say $6 million for advertising, $2.9 million for sales promotions like coupons, and a smaller amount for market research.
Part 3 looks beyond the immediate chaos of the launch.
Right. It describes the long-run sales and profit goals, maybe aiming for 25% market share and a 12% ROI within 5 years. It includes a roadmap for continuous quality improvement, gradual price lowering over time as production becomes more efficient, and how the promotion split will evolve.
For instance,
Well, you might move from an initial 65% of your budget on advertising to educate the market, down to 50% advertising later on, as the brand becomes more established.
okay, with the marketing strategy laid out, we hit the final financial gate, business analysis. This is where the paper plan becomes a rigorous set of sales and profit projections.
This analysis has to determine if the concept truly satisfies the company's financial objectives. And a major component of this is estimating sales, which varies wildly based on the purchase type.
So for infrequently purchased products, like a new refrigerator, you have to estimate first-time sales and replacement sales separately.
But for frequently purchased consumer goods, like our breakfast drink, the key is estimating repeat sales as well as the first-time trial sales. A high rate of repeat purchasing is the single most important indicator of customer satisfaction and long-term viability.
So if you get high trial but slow repeat sales, like Colgate's Wisp disposable toothbrush, that's a big red flag.
It's a huge red flag. It indicates initial excitement, but some underlying dissatisfaction or limited utility, and the product will probably fail eventually.
Now for the truly complex part, estimating costs and profits over time using the cash flow statement.
Right. R&D, manufacturing, marketing, and finance departments all provide cost estimates for the next 5 years. You track everything from sales revenue down to the final gross contribution.
And we also need to consider how this new product affects the existing product portfolio.
Yes. You have to account for drag-along income, which is the additional revenue generated for other company products because of the new launch, the halo effect. And conversely, you must account for cannibalized income, which is the reduced revenue from existing products that the new one steals away. This is critical for getting an honest forecast.
And because money tomorrow is fundamentally less valuable than money today, we have to look at discounted contribution.
This is where we have to pull out the conceptual calculator. If we expect $4.7 million in profit in 5 years, that money isn't worth $4.7 million today. We have to discount it back to its present value using a rate that reflects our cost of capital and investment alternative, say 15%. That $4.7 million might only be worth $2.3 million today.
And you use this discounted cash flow figure to make all the investment decisions.
All of them. So management looks at the cumulative discounted cash flow to make 2 final critical investment decisions.
And what are they?
First, the maximum investment exposure. This is the highest potential loss the project can ever create, which was $4.6 million in year 1 for a breakfast drink example. You have to be prepared to lose that amount before you can possibly succeed.
And second is the payback period. How long will it take to simply recover our investment and break even, accounting for the time value of money?
In our example, the payback period was about 3.5 years, so management has to look at those figures. A $4.6 million risk, a 3.5-year wait, and decide if the long-term payoff is worth the wait and the exposure. If the answer is yes, then we move into product execution.
And product execution starts with translating those desired customer attributes into measurable engineering requirements using something called quality function deployment, or QFD.
QFD is brilliant because it resolves that organizational tension we alluded to earlier. It forces the marketing department, which speaks the language of customer desire, and the engineering department, which speaks the language of technical specs, to use the same process.
So if the marketer says the customer wants better acceleration for a new truck, QFD translates that vague desire into engineering attributes.
Exactly. It might translate better acceleration into must achieve X horsepower, or must reduce chassis weight by Y pounds, or must have a certain engine displacement. QFD helps ensure that the final engineered product directly and efficiently delivers on the core customer attributes.
Once it's built, we move into rigorous customer testing.
This starts with alpha testing, which is internal testing performed within the firm to see how the product performs in different simulated environments. After that's refined, we go external with beta testing.
And beta testing, using customers in real-world environments, often exposes unanticipated problems.
Oh yes, problems with safety, servicing, or training requirements that the internal team never anticipated. This feedback is essential for finalizing manuals and support materials before the big launch.
And companies go to pretty extreme lengths for this rigor, as P&G did with their CoverGirl Outlast All-Day Lip Color.
They had to definitively prove that the lipstick lasted all day, so they invited 500 women to their labs. The women applied the lipstick in the morning, recorded all their activities throughout the day, eating, drinking, talking, and then they returned 8 hours later so P&G could objectively measure the remaining lip color.
That is some serious hands-on testing.
It is, but that observational testing ensured the product met the critical consumer requirement of lasting all day under real-world conditions before they committed to mass production.
Okay, so we've survived the financial analysis and the technical build. The product is ready to be branded and enter market testing. The primary goals here are to estimate 4 crucial variables: trial, first repeat, adoption, and purchase frequency.
Right. We need to know if consumers will try it, if they'll buy it again, if they'll permanently adopt it, and how often they'll purchase it. And products that are high risk, high investment, or that create an entirely new category, like the they warrant much more extensive market testing than, say, an incremental change.
Let's walk through the 4 main consumer goods market testing methods, starting with the fastest and least expensive: sales wave research.
In sales wave research, you quickly implement the test in a controlled lab environment. Consumers who initially try the product for free are then reoffered it, or a competitor's product, at reduced prices over several sales waves. You monitor the rebuy rate and satisfaction.
So it's fast and secure because competitors don't see it.
Right, but it doesn't tell you how many people would actually try it in a real store, as the subjects are all pre-selected.
Okay, next is simulated test marketing, or STM.
Here, shoppers are exposed to ads, maybe in a trailer or online, and then they're allowed to shop in a simulated, often virtual store setting. Afterward, they're interviewed. This can provide pretty accurate results on advertising effectiveness and trial rates, and it's fast and cheap.
But what's the downside?
The downside is that it is hard to truly simulate the complex, chaotic, real-world market conditions, and that can skew the findings.
Moving into managed real-world settings, we have controlled test marketing.
With this, a research firm manages the product in select panel stores, real stores, where data is consistently gathered. The firm controls the shelf position, the pricing, and all the local promotion. This is faster than a full test, but it has a major blind spot.
And that is?
It provides no data on how to sell the product to the trade, how to convince retailers like Walmart or Target to actually stock it. Plus, it exposes your product and all its features to your rivals.
So then the traditional gold standard, which is now often skipped, is the full test market.
This is a full marketing campaign run in 2 to 6 representative cities. The sales force works hard to sell the trade on carrying the product. You can run alternative marketing plans in different cities to measure the impact of varying strategies.
And managers face some difficult decisions here. Which cities are truly representative of the national market? And how long does the test have to run?
The duration is key. If you are launching a new type of chewing gum, the test can be short because the repurchase period is short. But if you are launching a new industrial machine tool that is purchased once every 5 years, the test has to be much, much longer to capture repeat purchasing. You gather data using store audits and consumer panels.
And the most important decision is interpreting the results.
Yes. If you see high trial and high repurchase, you launch nationally. If you see high trial but low repurchase, you have to redesign the product or drop it entirely. If both trial and repurchase are low, you abandon the project.
And that must be hard to do.
It is. The real danger here is the human element. Managers find it incredibly difficult to kill a project that has consumed so much effort and budget, which leads to an often unsuccessful escalation of commitment.
Given the speed of today's market, it makes sense that many companies are skipping the traditional full test market.
They are. They're opting for controlled early market launches. General Mills, for example, often launches new products in 25% of the country, too large for rivals to disrupt easily, and they use real-time retail scanner data for rapid fine-tuning within days.
Wow.
And Colgate-Palmolive uses small lead countries for sequential rollouts, which minimizes risk before they attempt a global launch.
So once a company commits, the final stage is commercialization. And this involves the largest cost to date up to $100 million for a major consumer packaged good. And timing is absolutely crucial.
Management faces three timing choices, especially if a competitor is lurking nearby. First entry allows you to claim first mover advantages, locking up distribution and mindshare, but it risks backfiring if the product is rushed and contains flaws, like the early version of the Wii that had some connectivity issues.
Then you have parallel entry.
Right. That means launching at the same time as the competitor, hoping that the overall market attention is amplified and you can grab your share.
And finally, late entry, which is the cautious approach.
Very cautious. You let the competitor bear the high cost of market education and reveal all the technical flaws and market weaknesses that you can then avoid. Apple often uses this strategy, observing the market before launching a superior, more polished product.
The geographic strategy also requires some deep thought.
Absolutely. Small companies might use a blitz strategy, targeting a single attractive city. Large companies launch regionally, using a planned market rollout based on market potential, distribution strength, and corporate reputation. And while the digital age encourages simultaneous global rollouts, sequential rollouts in those lead countries remain the smartest way to manage the massive risk involved.
And finally, managing the sheer number of moving pieces in a launch has to be a project manager's nightmare. You need a coordination tool.
To manage the countless simultaneous and sequential tasks manufacturing, distribution setup, advertising placement, Salesforce training management utilizes critical path scheduling, or CPS. Think of it like a contractor building a skyscraper.
Right. You can't put up the walls before the foundation is poured.
Exactly. CTS is a network planning technique that develops a master chart showing which activities must be completed before others can begin. It identifies the critical path, which is the sequence of activities that dictates the shortest route to project completion. If any activity on that critical path is delayed, the entire launch is delayed. It ensures deadlines are met by focusing resources where they matter most.
Our journey concludes where the product meets the person, the consumer adoption process. This describes the mental steps an individual passes through, from first hearing about an innovation to their decision to permanently adopt it.
There are 5 distinct stages, and marketers have to understand where consumers are getting stuck. First is awareness, where the consumer just lacks information about the product.
Second is interest, where they are stimulated to seek out information about the new technology or offering.
Third is evaluation, where the consumer considers whether trying the product makes sense for their life. Fourth is trial, trying the innovation on a limited, often low-cost basis. And finally, adoption, which is deciding on full and regular use.
So the marketer's job is to act as a facilitator, to remove roadblocks between those stages.
That's right. If, say, a smart home security system manufacturer finds that consumers are stuck at the evaluation stage because of the high investment cost, they might offer a small, inexpensive trial kit, a single window sensor, perhaps, for a low monthly fee, just to push them into the trial stage.
But adoption doesn't happen uniformly across the population. And this is where the famous 5 adopter categories come in, which are categorized by the relative time they embrace the innovation.
At the very beginning, you have the innovators. They're about 2.5% of the market. These are the venturesome, the technology enthusiasts. They enjoy tinkering. They often seek out early product flaws, and they're generally less price sensitive because the thrill of discovery is the primary reward for them.
Next up are the early adopters, about 13.5%.
These are the critical opinion leaders. They are often influential in their communities, and they carefully search for technologies that might give them a competitive advantage or social status. They are crucial because they validate the product for the masses.
Then we make the jump to the mainstream market with the early majority, which is 34%.
These are the deliberate pragmatists. They need proof. They adopt the new technology only when its benefits are firmly proven and when a significant amount of adoption has already occurred. This group is where the innovation moves from being a niche product to a mass market success.
Following them are the late majority, another 34%.
These are the skeptical conservatives. They are risk-averse, highly price-sensitive, and they tend to resist until peer pressure or just sheer necessity forces them to adopt. They want the lowest price and the highest reliability.
And finally, the laggards.
16%. They are tradition-bound. They resist until the existing status quo, the product they use today, is practically indefensible.
And personal influence is particularly important in speeding up this process, especially during that evaluation stage.
Oh, it's vital. Personal influence has more power over late adopters than early adopters, and it is most powerful in risky situations. When Nike entered the competitive skateboarding market, they didn't rely on expensive national ads.
What did they do?
They focused on targeting innovators and early adopters by selling exclusively to independent shops and engaging pro writers in the design process to build street cred with the opinion leaders first.
Finally, the speed of adoption, the rate at which people move through those stages, is influenced by 5 specific characteristics of the innovation itself. Let's use the example of digital video recorders, or DVRs.
So first is relative advantage. How superior is the innovation to existing products? DVRs had a huge relative advantage because they easily recorded shows and, more importantly, they allowed users to skip commercials, which was a clear instant benefit.
Second, compatibility.
This is the degree to which the innovation matches the existing values and experiences of the target audience. DVRs were highly compatible with the preferences of avid TV watchers who were already accustomed to programming devices like VCRs.
Third, complexity.
How difficult is it to understand or use the innovation? DVRs were somewhat complex, which meant that early interfaces were challenging, and this complexity slowed down the adoption rate, particularly among the late majority. Fourth is divisibility. This is the ability to try the innovation on a limited basis. For a DVR, this was challenging. You couldn't just use half a DVR. This made retail store demonstrations and return policies critical to helping people get to that trial stage.
And fifth, communicability.
This is the degree to which the benefits of use are easily observable or describable to others. The clear advantages of DVRs, specifically commercial skipping, were highly visible and really easy to describe to friends, which significantly helped create interest and curiosity. The smart marketer researches all these factors and addresses the weaknesses in the marketing program.
So we started with the radical success of the Nintendo Wii, which won by deliberately downgrading its technology. And we've tracked that initial spark all the way through the brutal financial discipline of the cost funnel, the organizational rigor of the stage-gate system, and finally to the sociology of how products are adopted by the early majority.
And the core takeaway, I think, is that successful product development is not linear. It is a highly disciplined, multi-stage process of winnowing, testing, adapting, and, yes, accepting failure. The single most important success factor that remains consistent throughout all of this is producing a unique, superior product that genuinely delivers on customer needs.
Which brings us back to that crucial tension point. We saw that success often requires intense research to map unmet customer needs. But we also heard the cautionary tale about the perils of listening too closely. The customers who famously ask for a faster horse instead of realizing they need a car. So if the ultimate success factor is that truly unique, superior product, how do you reconcile the need for intensive consumer research with the imperative to create radical innovations that customers don't even know they want yet?
And that is the innovator's constant challenge. Where exactly do you draw the line between mitigating financial and technical risk by listening to what the market is asking for and having the sheer confidence and daring vision required to transform an industry? Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.